speaking. Spoke to a lot of different associations meanwhile. Around Germany, Austria, Switzerland, of course, to the UK. Some of you may have heard I've been at main stage at NSA and main stage in the UK right afterwards. And they all have one thing in common, and as a German I have to say that. Not a single time my slot started on time. I often heard the question, what is the secret to make it to main stage? And there's not really a big secret, but there's something I did in the past which helped my business tremendously. The phrase, I think we don't really need speakers, came from a global company who book about 40,000 speakers per year, present in 189 countries around the globe. And after they did the evaluation, the speakers were rated 7.2 out of 10. So what they said was very simple. They said, we could ask someone from the local university. They may be boring, but at least they show up for free. So our question, which we had to answer, was, do we really deliver value? That was a speaker study we did. We're now doing that the 5th year in a row for that company. And of course, the results of these studies helped me a lot to grow my business, because what we've seen there, how speakers are really booked, can show you why some speakers are booked and overbooked, and some speakers just struggle to get any kind of appointment in their diary. Some speakers starve on speaking for free again and again and again, because we have so many myths around speaking associations where we tell people what we think is the right way to do, but it often doesn't align with the results of scientific studies. So what was it that made some speakers book and would keep some speakers away from booking? The number one fact they were looking for, and that is something that most websites and marketing materials lack completely, is, where is your expertise? We checked 5,500 speaker businesses, and within less than 10% we could find out what the real expertise is. And to make it clear, expertise is not to say you are a world-renowned #1 thought leader, best-selling, award-winning author, speaker, trainer, coach. That's not expertise. There's a word for that, and it's called self-proclaimed.
Yeah, come on. Hey.
Who wants that? Oh, Andy, come on. So number one must be, what is your expertise? And I always like to do something spontaneous. So is Ilya Greshkovitz, is he in the room? German.
He is.
May you please join me on stage, please?
That wasn't planned. Well, I will.
You're speaking later, so you better be good. No pressure. May you hold the microphone by yourself. So, what do you speak about?
I speak about change.
Change. Hardly anyone speaks about that. So, just to let you know some numbers, if you speak about sales, leadership, motivation, change, or health, 90%, 92% of the speaking market are covered. Sales, leadership, motivation, change, health. If you're in one of these 5 topics, you are in a really big group of people who try to get a pretty small number of really well-paid speaking gigs. What have you done before you became a professional speaker?
I have been a store manager for Germany's largest retail corporation, was responsible for 10 different locations. After that I was a store manager for IKEA, the Swedish furniture company. Yeah, and then I founded my own company.
Okay. What qualifies you to speak about change? What was the first store? Because the second one was IKEA. What was the first one?
The first one is called Karstadt, and it's a
big success story in Germany.
Success story, yeah. What qualifies me is change is the main topic of my own life. I've changed myself ever since. When I became the store manager, I moved around 15 times in 7 years. I had to start from scratch over and over again. I had to start with different teams. I had to deal with changes from the outside. I had to deal with changes from the inside. I had to change myself, of course. And I had to lead my different teams through various stages of change. Should have brought me up here.
I never staged things. How many years did you actually do that?
10, 15 years.
10, 15 years. Thank you very much. Give a warm applause. Thank you very much. Just to give a bit of background information, that is why I asked about the first check he worked for. Carsten was known for getting a new manager, and their new manager was known for cutting expenses wherever he could. People had to fly, coach had to travel by bus, by cheapest trains ever in the country, because there was a reason for that, because when the CEO flew from A to B, they bought a private jet for him. A couple of years later, after he left the company, they could prove that he spent corporate finance for his personal lifestyle. He has been sentenced to, I think, 2 or 3 years in jail, where I think he still is, and now filed for private bankruptcy. So you see, there is a real world experience of what Ilya has done. So what have you done that qualifies you? And to be a bit more straightforward, how dare you to stand on stage and tell other people what they should do? I need to see that. And on most marketing material, we hear the same words over and over again. 0 content, 100% ego. Always good when at least one person claps so you have something to build up on. Thank you. There's a very simple rule. Personality promotes and ego eliminates your business. Personality promotes and ego eliminates your business. But most speaking businesses I see, especially when people join the speaking market, they see these big names and you try to copy the behavior of someone who's on the market for 20 years. I thought it's pretty amazing. After I've been on main stage at NSA, people told me I'm an overnight success. Amazing. 18 years in business and I'm an overnight success. I don't know how long the nights in the US are. But obviously longer than in Germany because we're on time. Very important, what is your expertise? The reason why I got on main stage is Ron Cox, president of NSA, saw me speak about this speaker study in Amsterdam. A year later, Ron Carr, NSA president, saw me speak in Antwerp about speaking fees, and 1 year later, Shep Hyken, NSA president, saw me speak in Paris. All during speaking conventions. Not a single of these gigs were paid. It was all just giving back for what people have done for me before. So when you only stay around your own people, when you not travel abroad, when you never go to any other single conference, any other convention, don't be surprised that your business is not going abroad. You have to invest first. And because I showed up and had these 3 references, Shep Hyken proposed to the board, and the board agreed that I can be on main stage. They still must be frightened to death that a German guy is going to be on main stage speaking about speaking fees, because people in the US and the English-speaking world use something that we normally in Germany don't use, which is called humor. So after you have proven your expertise, to debunk the second myth we have from the Speaking Association, and yesterday I have been very happy to hear something. I heard that we have people from the Coaching Federation around and from the Training Association. Finally, because there's one big myth. In the speaking world, we have this 3-class system. Speakers are like the cool people. These are the rock stars. They're all millionaires. That's why at every NSA convention we have 1/3 first-timers who never come back because they're all so rich. They don't need to come back. So speaking is the rock star level, and when you, during a speaking convention, say you deliver training, people will tell, yeah, I did it in the past, I don't do it anymore. And when you tell people I'm a coach, they just think you're living on benefits. And then we ask clients, what do you think when you hire speakers, trainers, or coaches, where do you have to check more? Where do you have to trust more? And their answer was the complete other way around. They said, if you're a really bad speaker, what happens is you come, you may be expensive, but after 90 minutes we just get rid of you. So if you're a bad speaker, we will get over that. If you're a trainer, we give you 2 or 3 days maybe with our people. It's not about your fee, it's about having 10, 15 people off the schedule of work, which is pretty expensive, and you can tell them stuff which maybe is wrong, so we have to trust you a lot more when we give you training. And by far the highest amount of trust was needed when we're talking about coaching. So we have to get rid of this speaking arrogance that we think we're something better than the others. Because we're not. Every time people tell you, please remove training from your website because no one books you as a speaker when it says training. We couldn't find a single proof of that. Not a single person out of more than 1,200 bookers we talked to. Not one single person said, I don't book speakers when there's the word training on their website. If you offer more services, put it on your website. If you don't, of course, if you only do speaking, then of course you don't put it on your website, because some speakers think they can do training, and what they do is a keynote just very long. And that's not the real definition of training. So first, your expertise. Second, don't get rid of your training business if you have one. By the way, if we had for a crisis, the first people who get cut off the agenda due to cost are always the non-celebrity speakers. So if you have a non-celebrity speaking business and there is a crisis on the horizon, you better be prepared and have some savings, because you will have a lot of cancellations. Third factor, and that was the most difficult one for me, when you're on stage, no matter what topic you have, no matter what you talk about, you need to be somehow entertaining. And entertaining does not mean being awfully funny or being a rock star on stage. It can be moving, making people happy or sad, but having an emotional moment, something that happens beyond the content. Big cultural difference. When I speak in Germany, 80 to 90% on stage is the content. 10% is like being a nice guy, being a bit funny. When in Germany you use 10% humor, you're automatically the funniest guy they've ever seen. So it's pretty easy. When I speak in the UK, 30 to 40% of my time is just entertainment. And that means not telling jokes. You're not doing a stand-up routine. That's something different. When I'm in the US, I'm crossing the line of 50%. I don't know why, from a German point of view, very strange, but they love entertainment and a bit of information besides that. That explains the results of some elections, but I'm not getting into politics now. So, be sure that you have a proof that you are somehow entertaining, and that means then there must be some sort of video proof what you do on stage. And to debunk the next myth, I see lots of speakers who join the speaking industry and then they spend loads of money on professional speakery. It's not about that. I can give you an example. Go on the website of David Heiner in the UK. David Heiner, motivational speaker, very busy. His video is a camera in the back of the room, one position, no cuts, no professional blah blah blah, chumbawamba, just showing what he is doing on stage. And that video works perfectly for him. But the video needs to show what you really do. Most people are obsessed with getting in front of big audiences, whilst their real business is speaking in front of small audiences. I think about sustainable leadership, and what I see is, when I speak in front of 500 people, they challenge my fee. When they ask me to speak in front of 15 CEOs, no negotiation. They ask me and they normally want me already. So you have to check, does the video you have really reflect what you do? Or is it one of these marketing videos where people just think this is all scripted? So check what people find online in your video material. What does it show about you? What does it tell about you? Don't try to be a copy of anyone. That especially applies to motivational speakers, because I've seen way too many trying to be the cheap copy of someone. Next step, it must be very easy to reach out to you, and now here's the funny thing, which I think is just a psychological moment. Speakers who have someone in between the client and themselves get paid more money. So if you have a phone number where people call someone before they can get through to you, they're willing to pay more money for you. Even if you only have a virtual office somewhere in the middle and they just put you through, you get a higher fee. It's the perception of having a larger business. When you have your mobile phone number on your website, they know, okay, small business, so we know we can put them down the fee. So be sure, that does not mean, by the way, that does not mean fake it till you make it. That is a motivational quote which is frequently around. That's not true. Faking something towards clients, for example, getting speaker awards where you actually paid for the award. There's a word for that, and the word is fraud. So be sure that it is very easy for clients to reach out to you. And now 100% will say it is very easy to reach out to you. Just to give you one example. Last year we had a comedy night at the PSA in the United Kingdom. And 15 people registered. Alan Stevens tried to call them to just check what time they want to be on stage. 15 people. 4 people, even with Googling their names, there was no way how he could find out how to reach out to them. So how easy is it for your clients to reach out to you? For example, when you're in the training view, you're unavailable. So how can people be sure that they get in touch with you? The next thing bookers do is they, of course, look up online. Google is one thing, YouTube is another thing, but what they also do is they go on the common website and they look, what have you published? Publishing is extremely important if you claim to be an expert and they don't see any kind of publications within a tenth of a second, your whole credibility is gone. So be sure to have something published, but here's the important point. Be sure that you publish something good, not just something. There are these workshops, write your book in 7 days, yeah, and that looks like a book of 7 days. So when it takes 2 years until you have a really good book, take these 2 years, but put out a really good book. I'm not a best-selling author, not by far. Last year I thought a record number of 2,400 books. All of them scientific studies, because that's what I do. Leadership based on science. The difference is, some people may sell 200,000 books, but out of these, not even 2,500 books, we sold 200 days of training and about 50 speaking gigs. It's not about that you reach out to loads of people, it's important that you reach out to the right people, which speakers often don't do. Speakers tend to hang out with other speakers. Groundbreaking news. What about hanging out with some potential clients? Preferably clients with money, or a budget, or both. So be sure that people find what you published, because otherwise they're not going to believe you're an expert. To debunk the next myth, some people say, and I already met someone this morning, they said they're going to start now and they're going to contact agencies, and agencies are going to bring them on stage. That is what agencies are waiting for. Newbie speakers sending them unsolicited emails telling them, you need me. And there's one thing I'm absolutely sick of. How many people in this room have been a president of a national speakers, of some sort of speakers association? Please raise your hand. Okay, we have some. How many of you have been approached unsolicitedly by speakers who told you, you need me on main stage? Please raise your hand. How many of you? Thank you very much. I'm absolutely sick that speakers feel entitled. And the worst thing you can have as a speaker is entitlement thinking. You have to attract the stage. You can never push you up on a certain stage, except you pay for it, which is embarrassing enough when some people do it, but you have to attract the stage. And that's the only way how to get on main stage. I never asked NSA, would you like to put me on main stage? They asked me after I gave back for years. And that's one of our main jobs. The problem with that is, you need certain skills when you're on stage. Some people say, I have the expertise, I have the content, so I'm going to be a good speaker. That's not true. And I'm going to give you an excellent example of how to be a brilliant speaker in just 30 seconds. But you need to master the craft of storytelling. If you are not and it doesn't matter what you're talking about, even if you talk about very abstract financial things, if you have no story and no skill for storytelling, you're never going to make it in the speaking world. I'm going to give you an example. Last year I've been at the NSA convention and we had an International Speakers Day. We're very happy that the NSAs will have an International Speaking Day. Who knows if we're going to have it after they build the big, big wall. So I've been sitting there after I've been on stage, and then they told me, now someone's coming up telling about the international speaking, and his name is Frederick Harron. And I said, who? Because I never heard of him. And it's really difficult when I've never heard of you to grab my attention, because I heard so many speakers. He came on stage, grabbed my attention within 5 seconds, and kept me on my seat for every single minute. And after he left the stage, I just thought it's going to be very difficult for the other speakers during the whole convention to be better than him. No one came even close. So I connected with him, and he's on Facebook, he has a professional speaking website, has interesting.org, very professional businesses, very successful international speaker, and I looked on his Facebook timeline, and I went down till December 31st, January 1st, we had the big rain here. The whole timeline, it was a bit like this article, that article, bit of family, bit of travel, and there were zero pictures of empty rooms where he is speaking. I have no idea why speakers do that, and I'm going to hold back with my personal opinion. I can only tell you what clients who book speakers told us about their perception of empty room pictures. They said, if you're so excited about the empty room, it simply means you're obviously not speaking on one very often. So it doesn't speak in favor of you. People do it to get a bit of applause from their speaking colleagues. And it's 90% ego. But posting an empty room never brought anyone any business. And now, of course, you will know the one exception who actually got a business out of that. I just stick to what people who book speakers actually told us. So when you're in storytelling, and Frederick is excellent with that, and I'm sure he's going to give you a free coaching week or something. No pressure. Every single one of you. Always to be the opening keynote speaker. What you have to master within a story, because some speakers have these typical motivational keynote, all story, no content. And the problem with that is the time of that is over. These stories which start like, and I'm going to do the right to left thing. I'm like, oh, I've been so bad, and I've been sitting homeless, my burning caravan behind me, just in my trainers. Then I made this, and I made that, and I made that, and now I'm here. End of the keynote. This is not what people will pay you in the future for. 3 points you have to mention, you have to take care of. And I'm quoting Alan Stevens now. It's not my brains. Alan Stevens, former president of the Professional Speaking Association in the United Kingdom. First, there's a story. That's step one. That's the easy part. More or less easy part. It's not too easy. Story. Step number one, there must be a point. Some stories don't have a point. It's just speakers talking about their own story. And there's no point with that. Story, point, and step number 3, example. Story, point, example, SPE. Of course, you could do a 2-week class in storytelling, and it's worth doing that, but the most simple structure is story, point, example. I just spoke during a business conference where a professional football player, you would maybe call soccer here, spoke to a business audience, and they were bankers. And he was telling the principals what he did during his training. And then he said, well, how to adopt that to your business, I don't know, that's your job. No. No. That is exactly your job as a speaker. So most speakers I see do only story. Some do story point, but most speakers don't do the third point, example. Story point, example. How can the people in this room where you talk now put that what you taught them into practice tomorrow? That's where the work begins. And that is why I think that you can't give the same keynote just to 1,000 people again and again and again. Some speakers have one keynote and they're just telling it over and over and over again. And then they're surprised that their business goes down. Story, point, example. So, when you master storytelling, the next step you need to be able to do is marketing. And I'm going just to give you, because I'm not a marketing speaker, I can just tell you, I read 5 books. And I just did what in these 5 books. And let's be honest, I moved to London in the UK 4 years ago. Is there a need for a non-native, non-funny German immigrant telling UK people how to run their businesses? Clearly not. Still, that wasn't meant to be funny. Still, still about 60% of my business, meanwhile, happens outside my home country, and that happened within 4 years. So, books you really need to read. Oh, by the way, very important, but when I tell you the books, it doesn't help you only to buy them. Because what I often see is that speakers start with self-improvement, but what they really do is shelf improvement. Looks great, doesn't help you. So, book number 1, David Newman from the United States, Do It Marketing. David Newman, like new and man. Follow David Newman on every single channel you can. He's giving lots of content and great content, down to earth help away for free. Do It Marketing. Yeah, Do It Marketing. Number 2, David Evren. Maybe it's the name David, I have no idea. Also from the US, David Evren, Visibility Marketing.
How do you spell that?
Avrin. Yeah. Number 3, and now you better just write the title down because the name is a bit complicated. Heather Townsend, just Google Go-To Expert. She's from the UK, and the only book which is published with that title, The Go-To Expert. This book shows you how you become, in the mind of your clients, the person to go to when they have a question about that area of expertise. The Go-To Expert. And number 4 is Bryony Thomas, just write down the book title, Watertight Marketing. She's also from the UK. Watertight Marketing. The last book I'd like to mention goes hand in hand with a recommendation. We have someone in this room, and he did a year and a half to get grip of that guy, and he gives you a strategic asset, which in my opinion, you can't run any speaking business anymore in a couple of years. In my opinion, when you're not able to master that skill, you will be out of business within the next 5 years or less. The skill is networking. Andy Lopata, who's sitting over there, who's going to give a keynote here during a breakout session, and I highly recommend you to go there, because otherwise it may take 2, 3, 4, 5 years because he's traveling around the world. Only by coming here, he's going to speak 10 times in 7 days or something? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So he's giving 10 speeches here in Hong Kong, traveling on and on and on. So the book is called Recommended. What I simply did is, I bought the book, I read it, and my company is just doing what's in this book. We just follow every single letter. Because most of the gigs are given away by networking. We always think that CEOs sit down and think for hours and weeks and months, who shall I book for our event? And they don't. What they do is, they come in like, hey, good morning. Oh, by the way, how was that lady named we had like last week in the Jodie? Yeah, book her for the next event. Thank you. This is how loads of events are given away. And just to let you know, if you're only relying on agencies get less than 5% of the market. 4.8% of the speaking market is given away by speaking bureaus. And bureaus know that. And they don't have a problem with that. But you miss lots of opportunities if you're only relying on them. Last but not least, and that is something which may be a bit critical, what you need to succeed as a speaker is a very clear and unique message. Most speakers I listen to are so general, so overly polite, and so neutral with what they say because they are so afraid of telling someone something they don't like, because they tell me, my clients all love me. Bad news. If 100% of people in the room love you, you did something wrong. Germans are very good at being not popular, but that's something different. So name any person who is successful. Politician, speaker, someone who works in theater or arts or social service. Do you know any single person who is successful and where 100% say, I love that person? Not a single one. And then people tell me, yeah, we call it passive aggressive, and I call it you have no opinion. So you need to have a message which makes very clear what your take on the topic is. I give you an example. Randy Gage, very well-known motivational speaker, posts on his fan page just one meme, his face, where it says, what you really should do against the war on poverty, get rich, exclamation mark. And of course, thousands of people freak, how can you say this is so American, this is so ignorant? And he knows that this is going to happen. But this is his take, you don't have to agree. He just says, 40% do not like me, perfect, I'm going to put you off, I don't speak to you. 60%, you are my target audience. When 100% in the room like you did something wrong. When I've been on main stage at NSA, I talked about speakers talking too much about themselves. And I said, well, let's just imagine someone writes an article just talking about him or herself. Does that work? Probably not. Someone on the radio just talking about yourself. Does that work? Probably not. When you have someone in front of an audience who says, I can do that because I'm really rich, does that work? Hopefully not. And I received a couple of furious emails from Republicans who said, how do you dare to criticize our candidate? And that was what I aimed for, to draw a very clear line where my support for something ends and what my take on a certain topic is. You don't have to go into politics for that. But when you have this very general keynote, for example, leadership speakers often say something like, be a good example, like your people, see their motivation, thank you very much. Or sales speakers always tell me, well, look at what your clients really need, have a good proposal, call them again, then they have some weird acronyms, A stands for this, C for that, blah, 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 thank you very much, applause. Times for these are over. These were the days where you could say, you have potential, and you have potential, and you, and you, and you. No one is going to pay you for that. That may sound horribly straightforward, but unfortunately markets changed. The typical meeting where people just say, we have a speaker anyway, doesn't happen anymore. People say, we have a certain budget, is it worth spending it for a speaker? So you must be able to not only take, but also be able to handle dead honest feedback. And in speaking associations, we tend to not be honest enough. Even in the region where I am, London regional meeting, we have people who do a showcase, and then we have the feedback, open feedback, and as soon as you say something negative, the host tells you, don't do it in public, we don't do negative feedback here. The only way to grow is when people tell you what has been really, really bad of what you've done. And if you can't handle that, you didn't deserve to get on these stages. And by the way, not every feedback is good feedback. I'm going to ask, some people are already told before, some people I'm going to ask for feedback after this speech. Some people always come to me, normally they are speaker coaches, and then they're going to tell me, don't hold your hands like this, hold them more like that. Well, great for you, I'm not buying with you, unsolicited feedback isn't worth anything. Yeah. Thank you. So just to wrap that up, I grew up in a very small village. My mother stayed at home, my father worked for the state. We have a very long family tradition of, since 1500 something, my whole family is working for the state. We were far away from rich. When I had the first idea in 7th grade, I said, I want to go a year to a private school in UK. The answer was simply, we can't afford that. And then they told me, this is not for you. One problem is, of course, that people tend to tell you what is not for you and what is for you. But I grew up far, far away from rich. Anyone in this room, every single person can make it in the speaking industry. I can just tell you it is a lot of very hard work. And the way how to attract the stage is, and that is the reason why, for example, Andy Preston or Andy Lopata or Frederick, who went to the US, or Shirley, who I think spent her whole life on serving speaking associations, meanwhile, which is, I think, painful sometimes. Nabil, loads of people, Jonathan, we have so many people, and they have a great speaking career, because one thing, it's the most important factor when you want to become a speaker on big stages. Give them back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niels. Awesome job.